Coming up on Early Edition at 6, South Korea's military vows to tighten up its air defenses against small unmanned aerial vehicles after recent discoveries of suspected North Korean drones. Washington will send 2 additional ballistic missile destroyers to Japan to counter the North Korean threat and warns China to respect its neighbors. And after a month of searching, investigators now have their most promising lead yet in the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. We'll have the details. Early Edition begins now.
당신의 유럽은 어디였나요?
Excellence in flight. Korean Air.
It is 5 a.m. in Washington, 7 p.m. in Canberra, and 6 on a Monday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Kwon-young.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us on this new set.
Our top story this Monday evening, South Korea remains on high alert after yet another suspected North Korean drone was discovered on a mountain in Gangwon-do province over the weekend.
And that's roughly 130 kilometers south of the inter-Korean border. And this is the 3rd drone to be found in recent days. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Kim Hyun-bin starts us off.
Key commanders from every branch of the military held an emergency meeting Monday to discuss the recent infiltrations of unmanned aerial vehicles. Defense Minister Kim Kwang-jin, who led the meeting, urged all the military to be at the ready for any threat out of Pyongyang. Kim emphasized that the 3 drones found in South Korea in recent days were for surveillance purposes, but warned that future ones may be used to carry out attacks. North Korea has hundreds of unmanned aerial vehicles in its possession, so there could very well be more found in South Korea in the coming days and weeks. The South Korean military says it's well equipped to deal with enemy jet incursions and attack UAVs, but adds that it's much more difficult to detect these types of UAVs, which are very small in size. Seoul says it plans to purchase low-altitude radar and other military gadgetry to prevent further infiltrations. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said it will take strong actions over Pyongyang's violation of its airspace, and will also mobilize units across the country to search for other drones. A 3rd drone was found on a mountain in Samcheok, Gangwon province, and was reported to the military authorities last Friday. Initial investigations show that drone is the same model as the one that crashed in Paju late last month. It is a worry, as the South Korean military failed to detect these ones until they crashed on South Korea's soil. The ministry says if the drones are confirmed to have come from the north, it will put Pyongyang in clear violation of not only the Korean Armistice Agreement, but also of an international agreement that forbids flying over another country's airspace without prior notification. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye says South Korea needs to come up with a contingency plan that addresses any type of provocation from North Korea. She was speaking at a meeting with her chief secretaries earlier this Monday morning. There, President Park said North Korea's string of ballistic missile launches and its strengthened surveillance techniques need to be taken seriously. She called on her officials to come up with a plan of action sooner rather than later. Now, the sense of urgency, she said, was due to public fear over the continued threats and provocations.
Now shifting our focus to outside of Korea, the U.S. has reiterated its support for Tokyo's efforts to bolster its military defense capabilities.
Now, Washington also announced plans to send 2 more ballistic missile destroyers to Japan by the year 2017 to help its Asian ally counter North Korean threats and stand up to a more assertive China. Our UDN has this report.
U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel has welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's push for collective self-defense by altering Tokyo's war-renouncing constitution. Speaking at a joint news conference with his Japanese counterpart in Tokyo on Sunday, Hagel said Japan was playing a proactive role in contributing to global and regional peace and stability. In addition, Hagel announced plans to send 2 advanced destroyers equipped with ballistic missile defense systems to Japan in the face of a more threatening North Korea.
In response to Pyongyang's pattern of provocative and destabilizing actions, including recent missile launches in violation of UN Security Council resolutions.
The announcement comes a matter of days after Pyongyang test-fired 2 mid-range ballistic missiles into the EC, following a series of shorter-range missiles in recent weeks.
For the safety of Japan and of Eastern Asia, we believe that Japan's Aegis system and the United States Aegis system is very effective.
The extra ships will bring the total number of U.S. Aegis destroyers deployed in Japan to 7. Hagel also sent a message to China saying it should respect its neighbors, adding that coercion and intimidation will only lead to conflict. Yurian, Arirang News.
And U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel touched down in Beijing on Monday for a visit and, in doing so, landed smack dab in the middle of a diplomatic row between Beijing and Tokyo.
Our foreign affairs correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports on how Washington is firmly taking Japan's side on territorial issues.
The United States is siding with Japan in a dispute with China that's brewing over historical and territorial issues. And the biannual Western Pacific Naval Symposium next month is shaping up as center stage. China has invited all participating nations to take part in an international fleet review where they can parade their ships, with one exception, Japan. Washington has said no American ships will sail if no Japanese ships do. This is not the first time the U.S. has been drawn into the escalating diplomatic row between Japan and China. Late last year, China sparked a trans-Pacific uproar by declaring an air defense identification zone, giving itself the right to identify and take military action against aircraft near the Japan-controlled Senkaku Island, which is also claimed by China. Washington defied Beijing by sending military planes into the zone unannounced. In another sign of support for Japan, U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel welcomed Tokyo's push for collective self-defense by altering its war-renouncing constitution. Hagel said Sunday in Tokyo that Japan was playing a proactive role in contributing to global and regional peace and stability. Whether Hagel will address the fleet review issue during his visit in Beijing remains unclear, but experts say China may not want Japanese warships in its waters because of Japan's occupation of China during the Second World War. Amid the regional spat, South Korea, a country also mired in a diplomatic dispute with Japan, is tightening its bond with China. According to sources Monday, Seoul's Financial Supervisory Service Governor Choi Soo-hyun met his Chinese counterpart in Beijing last week and agreed to bolster financial cooperation. In the past, South Korea had maintained closer economic ties with Japan. The two neighbors will also conduct a joint study of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women through historical documents preserved in China. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Washington's special envoy for North Korean human rights issues has no plans to visit North Korea, not now at least. But Robert King did leave the door open for a possible trip in the future, saying he'd go if Pyongyang invited him. Judging by comments from North Korean ambassador to the UN over the weekend, King shouldn't wait by the phone. Lee Dong-il said the North has no intention of ever allowing King on North Korean soil. Pyongyang invited King to visit in February to discuss the release of Korean-American Kenneth Bae, but withdrew that invite at the last moment, rather. The U.S. envoy noted that despite Washington's continuous appeals to release Bae, the North has not given a positive response. King is currently on a 5-day visit to Seoul and will travel to Tokyo later this week.
On the third day of the National Assembly's interpellation session this Monday, lawmakers put the finance minister in the hot seat, demanding answers about the string of data leaks to hit the nation in recent months. Our political correspondent Kim Young-gil has more.
Protecting the public's personal information was at the top of the agenda during Monday's Assembly session. Both ruling and main opposition party lawmakers asked whether proper measures had been taken in light of 3 massive leaks of private data this year alone, including the nation's largest ever in January.
Finance officials assured us that secondary data leaks did not happen. But in March, the 3 credit card firms confirmed that more than 83 million cases of client data were leaked to a third party. What do you make of this?
I give my sincere apologies to the people, but the secondary data leaks did not include the client's credit card passwords or their CVC codes. It is impossible to forge credit cards without the two.
Hyun said the government released interim measures in March that strengthened data protection, which include closer monitoring of voice phishing or smishing scams. Final contingency plans will be announced in the first half of the year. Lawmakers from the opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy took aim at President Park's deregulation drive, saying it threatens to undermine the economy.
There are good regulations and bad regulations. There are regulations that need to be lifted to stimulate the economy. However, President Park Geun-hye is trying to do away with too many.
The government is trying to use deregulation as a tool to stimulate the economy by promoting investment and creating jobs. Our objective is to remove excessive red tape that may hinder business activities.
Lawmakers also mentioned Korea's alarming household debt problem, which hit a record $950 billion as of the end of last year. At the hearing, the government said it is doing all it can to help low-income debtors handle loan repayments from government funding programs. However, some lawmakers demanded that the government devise more concrete measures to deal with combined debt held by households, companies, and government organizations. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Now, shifting our focus, the non-financial assets of Korean households make up more than 70% of all, and most of it is tied up in real estate. It's something that's setting off alarm bells as price cuts in the housing market could have a devastating impact on household finances and then in turn the economy. Arirang's Hwang Ji-hye explains.
The ratio of non-financial assets to all assets in Korean households is among the highest in the world. Statistics Korea data shows that the ratio was over 70% last year, far above the United States. Real estate assets in particular accounted for around 68% of those held by Korean households, down almost 2 percentage points from 2012. That, however, represents the biggest chunk. Experts say real estate is pursued because it's a profitable and stable investment outlet. But they also caution that an asset structure that leans too heavily on property could have a devastating impact on household finances.
Ratio of real estate assets are especially high among the elderly, and when property prices go down, they will have less money to spend for their years after retirement.
The experts add that there's a high possibility the nation's property prices will fall since Korean households will likely start selling their real estate to secure a stable source of income after retirement. They advise people to diversify their assets and make the best out of pension funds that allow people to secure loans based on the properties they have mortgaged. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
It's about time. Investigators leading the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 say they've come across their most promising lead yet. An Australian Navy ship has detected new signals that are consistent with those emitted from aircraft black boxes. But time is not on their side. Our Connie Kim explains why.
It could be the break investigators have been seeking out for 1 month now in their search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. 2 separate signals were detected by the Australian vessel known as Ocean Shield over the weekend. Angus Houston, who is leading the search, said the first signal picked up in the Indian Ocean lasted for about 2.5 hours and the second one for about 13 minutes. Officials said the pings were consistent with those emitted by aircraft black boxes. While optimistic about the discovery, Houston was quick to tamp down expectations. He said further confirmation was needed as the sounds were heard from a depth of 4,500 meters. The search team plans to lower Bluefin 21, Ocean Shield's underwater autonomous vehicle, once they can pinpoint a more exact location for the signals. But officials say it'll take days to confirm whether the pings were from the missing aircraft. The most pressing issue now is time. The search entered its 31st day on Monday, and the batteries of the black box are feared to run out any day now if they haven't already. There are currently 12 aircraft and 14 ships taking part in search operations, but severe weather conditions in the South Indian Ocean are in the forecast, making their jobs even more difficult. Flight 370, carrying 239 people, is believed to have gone down in the Indian Ocean sometime on March 8th. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Well, today we wish a very happy 45th birthday to the internet. Well, in truth, pinning down an exact date for the birth of the internet isn't really possible, but some leading tech magazines suggest today is as good a day as any to celebrate because...
Well, it was on the 7th of April, way back in 1969, that the first RFC request for comment documents were published. In fact, RFC documents describe the theoretical foundations of the internet and interconnected computers.
You know, all of that sounds very complicated, but the truth is that the internet is, for us, those of us living in this 21st century,
it's like the air that we breathe.
Right, something that we cannot go a day without. So we'd like to take a look at where the wired world is headed from here on out.
And of course, we're not going to be able to do it alone. To help us, we are joined live in the studio by Dr. Moon Song-chun, professor at the Graduate School of Management at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology.
Dr. Moon, it's great to have you back here. Welcome.
Hello.
Now, first off, let's first go over 4G. I think most of us have got 4G covered. We're either on 4G or LTE. And the word is that the internet is now advancing or heading towards 5G and a new technology called the IoT, or the Internet of Things. Now, to be honest with you, I don't have a good grasp of what this is. So could you help us?
Yes. The one typical example of 4G is like this. The last October, the 조선일보 was very successful in broadcasting 26-mile marathon race on live by cell phone, LTE cell phone. But if you think of the Formula One race, which is much faster than marathon race, then 4G is not enough. We need more wider and higher data capacity. And that capacity is about 100 times more wider and higher. So that's the idea of 5G. In 5G, we have about the 10,000 lane road. And for comparison, 4G has only 10 lanes. That's the difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah, huge difference.
Astronomical. Well, let's try and name some names and have some faces to go with the technology that we have today. Which IT company would you say is the trendsetter or the trailblazer in terms of 5G technology today?
That's the Korean company like Samsung and Japanese company like Sony. And the Korea will host the Winter Olympic in 2018. And Japan will host Summer Olympic in 2020. So Japan and Korea are very eager to show their position as a fast mover and trendsetter in 5G. So that's gonna be the first ever 5G Olympic in the world. So they will make a history, and that's the idea. So the Samsung, Sony, NTT Docomo, LG Electronics, that's it.
It's a Korea-Japan rivalry like no other, between technological giants rather than athletes there.
Not like in soccer.
Not like soccer. Well, what about the IoT or Internet of Things? Who's leading the way here?
That's definitely Google. The Google is the modern trendsetter. The Google acquired the Nest Lab, which controls room temperatures in living room, and the Google also acquired Oculus, which uses about this size of three-dimensional displays that can capture any object that can be seen. And once the object is captured, the detail of the object will appear in half a second from Google database.
Wow.
That's the idea of Google.
So this is the successful refurbished version of the Google Glass, if I'm not correct.
That's possible in reality now. And that will be commercialized maybe in 5 hours' time.
Now, also marking an anniversary is something that we're more familiar with, the World Wide Web. Of course, last month it marked the 25th anniversary of the invention of the www dot. Now, what started as a way for scientists to share their research, in fact, it became or changed the worldwide life forever. Enlighten us a little bit on that as well.
Yeah, that was a very famous guy, a very the intelligent and great visionary called the Mr. Tim Berners-Lee. And he was a graduate of Oxford University, which studied the physics, and he later entered the master's degree program in MIT. And he stopped his study and moved to European the nuclear particle research laboratory, which lately found out the Higgs particle.
Higgs boson?
Yeah, boson, yeah, right. And he was involved in a very big project in which 400 programmers code their program. And he decided the meeting and bringing 400 members in one to have a discussion, in one room to have a discussion is almost impossible and time consuming. So he decided to invent some concept like a homepage. By having homepage, the one programmer can visit another programmer's homepage and then have a look how the progress has gone and see what happened there and come out to their PC, his own PC. That's the idea of homepage.
Right.
So he invented homepage and made internet very simple to use and made it public with no reward in money.
Right. It
and
started
that
out
changed
with
the lives of all of us.
He's live and
right.
57 years old.
Right.
Very gentleman. You know.
Right. That's
English person.
Right. Very good deed on him. So what more lies ahead in the world of World Wide Web and beyond?
The two keywords are digitization and connection. You know, the only 10% of the object in the world is connected. And only 10% of our work, which is done in analog, is digitized. For example, think about the black box in aircraft. It is still analog. It is not digitized. So, but the trend is that it will be digitized. It will be connected to internet server, and it will send the signal each second, so that the satellite can receive the signal, and it can send to the internet server, internet data center on the ground. So there is no need to have a black box in the aircraft or ship as of today. And we just need internet to be connected to ships or aircraft. That's what you can see in the future.
Well, a small invention that was created out of personal necessity has done something for the greater good, the rest of the world.
That's right.
Right. Well, Dr. Moon Sung-chun, we could go on and on, but unfortunately we ran out of time. We look forward to having you back here soon. Thank you for coming.
Thanks indeed.
Not facing.
We apologize.
We're all destroyed.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. talking with you on air and online, connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best, with Moon Gong-yong and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Proposal for talks of holding regular reunions for families separated by the Korean War. Their reason.
Well, you know, we had a beautiful start to the week here in Seoul, so let's go and check in with our Michelle Park for more details. Michelle, can we expect another picture-perfect day tomorrow?
Good evening, guys, and we did have perfect spring weather today, and it's supposed to warm up even more tomorrow.
But the weather these days have been somewhat like North Korea, unpredictable and fickle-minded. Will it stick? It got pretty cold this past weekend.
Yes, in fact, the weather will get better throughout the week, but the strong winds continue by tomorrow. Now, the highs will linger in the high teens to low 20s with dry weather advisory in some regions. Now, we're expecting rain in the central region on Wednesday evening and rain nationwide over the weekend, which will relieve some of these dry weather conditions we've been dealing with. Now, going over to our temperature readings. Seoul tops out at 6 in the morning and gets up to 19 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will get up to 24 and 21 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island expects it up to 18 degrees, Dokdo peaks at 16, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 14. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. For our viewers in Korea, have a wonderful rest of the evening.
And a great start of the day to those of you in other parts of the world.
This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Moon Gong-young. We hope to see you back here same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.